The NSE All-Share Index closing the quarter, the half, and of course the week on a pretty low note, down about 0.8% to 36,164 points. The big losers on the day included Nestle Nigeria, Total, Dangote Cement, and flour mills, while the gainers included UACN and Cadbury. So let's now cross to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, where Jimmy Ogbobine is standing by to give us his thoughts on the market. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us. So like I said, quite a bit to get through this today because it's as significant as the end of the week, the end of the quarter, and of course the end of the year. We saw the NSE All-Share Index break 40,000 at some point. It has fallen back quite a bit. Now for the year, it's only up about 29%. So what did you make of this half, and what does it tell you about what we can expect going into the second half?
Well, the half has been quite an interesting one. Some people have made quite an amount of money, and some have lost as well. It all depends on when you came in. If you see the numbers, for instance, you were talking about 30%. If you see the numbers across board, for instance, you find out that in terms of first half, when you look at January to date, the positive returns have been quite strong. The NSE has done about 29% January to date. But when you look at the quarter, that's from April to date, you find out that there's a muted growth, so just about 7%, and that runs across board. When you look at a stock like Wema, for instance, it's returned about 134% within the first half of the year. And you see such numbers when you look at the first half. So even the 7% gain we're looking at and the 29% gain we're looking at, it's because during the first quarter we've had very, very strong growth. So that's what's been supporting this present quarter, which has been quite disappointing for quite a number of people.
Like you mentioned, a bit disappointing the second quarter, but then overall not a bad performance. It's one of the best performers on the African continent. But as we ended this quarter, there was a lot of concern about volatility. The market was going south, the impact of things happening elsewhere around the world on this market. So going into the third quarter, do you think this bearish momentum is going to continue?
Now, going into the third quarter, some things are outside our hands. You have some exogenous factors. Foreign portfolio investors are worried about quite a number of things beyond even the performance of our companies and our corporates. They're looking at Nigeria's government revenues, which dropped 5% last month. They're looking at the volatility. And very importantly, they're looking at the Naira, because it's the stability of your Naira that has helped usher in all this hot money and foreign portfolio investments that we've seen in various asset classes, in bonds and equities. So these are the things actually that determine quarter three beyond corporate performance. The Naira and the MPC meeting in July will probably be the most crucial meeting in the last 2 years that we've ever seen.
Well, interesting point you're making about the MPC. Of course, where we see yields in the fixed income market is something else that I think a lot of people will be thinking about going into the third quarter. Of course, we are going to see the bank results in the next couple of weeks. We should see some of them coming out. How important are those for you in terms of setting the tone for the rest of the year?
Quite important, very important. For instance, if GT continues with his half-year interim tradition of paying dividends, and at least that settles investors who've been quite worried that it's been a very pricey stock, and that's why you saw it, fall from about 30 to about 24 right now. And at current levels, I think investors are more comfortable, especially when you look at the P's of around 8. And then when you look at tier 2 names like Skybank and Diamond Bank, when you see their P's quite low and quite worrying, P's of less than 5. Diamond Bank is talking of a $550 million euro bond, and it has a P of less than 4. So actually, you just hope that investors will begin to see value in some of these kinds of names after first half results will be released.
All right, so hopefully no negative surprises in those numbers. But let's touch, I think, two stocks in particular for me. Dangote Cement, it's been quite volatile this quarter. It's done pretty well. It's one of the reasons why the market is up where it is for the year. And if I just run through the numbers, for the year, it's actually up 42%. So is there more, do you think there's still some way to go for Dangote Cement? I think more people are beginning to think that it's a good price at the current levels. It's currently trading at 182 Naira per share.
Yeah, trading at 182 Naira per share, but at a P of about 20. Well, you can't compare apples and oranges, but if investors begin to do portfolio rebalancing, especially when you consider the fact that quite a number of people have also lost some amount in some of the corrections that took place, now you may see some sell-offs there for value investments and for underpriced and discounted stocks like Zenith and maybe a First Bank, for instance, especially Zenith. But overall, I mean, but overall, when you look at Dangote Cement, always remember that the liquidity issue, it had less than 5% in public float. So how much volatility really can investors stimulate on such a stock when they only have 5% to play with?
Right.
So that will always stymie whatever level of volatility you expect or you envisage.
All right, so you're touching, I think, a very important point, the float of some of these stocks. So the number of companies available for investors is a big issue. And if we review this first half, what would you say has disappointed you the most? Some people may point to the fact that we still haven't seen any public offerings. Some people will say we haven't seen any new listings. What, for you, has been the most disappointing aspect of this first half?
Well, in terms of public offerings, we've got to remember where we're coming from. We're coming from one of the worst form of crashes we ever witnessed in this market. We're coming
a lot of people say that was 2-3 years ago, man. We've
it was
moved on
2-3 years ago, and I mean, people's entire wealth were wiped out. Rich men became poor men, and the same generation who lost so much money are the same people who try. It's taken some markets 20-30 years. It took the American 1930 crash. It took them over 3 decades to recover. Japan hasn't reached the pre-1980 levels after the banking crisis of the 80s and mid-90s. So it actually takes countries 2 decades to recover from the kind of correction, especially when, from kind of crash, it was beyond the correction, especially when the fundamentals of the economy have not significantly improved to support the kinds of spike we've seen in prices. So I think I'm not going to join this bandwagon of disappointment because there have been no public offerings. Recovery will come. It will come gradually. I do not want to see an overnight recovery lest we begin to talk of another asset bubble again. Right. Let's take it bit by bit. It's happening. Do
you feel there's a bubble happening in the consumer stock space? A lot, like I mentioned, Nestle, 960 naira per share.
Yes, I think there's, without mincing words about it, Cadbury, Nestle, I'm quite uncomfortable with their prices, and if I'm a portfolio manager right now, I probably want to take my profit and walk away, especially when you have other names as well, other value names as well, which offer you quite good potential for returns, and you have other asset classes as well. I mean, right now, looking at the yields on the government bonds, it's quite a good re-entry point for people. So if I were an institutional investor, I probably want to take my profits and walk away, rather than cry again.
Final word for the second half. Are we going to close higher than where we are right now? NSE ASI index at 36,164 points.
I think we're just going to do, say, 5 to 10% gain. I really do not see any crazy spiral.